Just a moment.
Obviously, Sahir Ludhianvi, in the very first two lines of the poem, you can see here, he is talking about the unkept promises. The promises that were made by the political leaders of the country. Prior to independence, they had uh, made such promises. After independence, when the first government came to power, and then again in the first elections, uh, there were promises made by these political leaders that if we are elected, if you give us your vote, then obviously we will do so many things for you. Just what happens even today, it is going on and on and on. This tradition of the seeking of votes by the political leaders of different parties, not just one party, but Sahir Ludhianvi is talking about the post-independence scenario. Just after independence, when there was a high enthusiasm, a feeling that perhaps India would emerge as a very strong nation, where there would not be any kind of inequality, and where everyone would be able to reap in uh, the the fruits of independence. So that was the dream that they had dreamt. The oppression would end. The oppression, the hardship that they had had to endure during the British rule, now that their own countrymen were in power, their own countrymen were ruling them, they were in fact instrumental in sending them to parliament, and they were the people's representatives. So in a way, indirectly, they were ruling the common people. But the high hopes were belied. So that is a question he is asking, and the question has its own answer. It is a kind of a rhetorical question. It has its own answer. So obviously, those dreams were not realized. When wealth increased, why did poverty also increase in the country? What happened? The means of increasing the prosperity of the people. So the poet is confused. He's saying that, or rather, he has seen all around him wealthy people, people who had amassed, who had gathered a large quantity of wealth. So obviously, it is a fact that uh, the number of wealthy people had increased over the years after independence. But at the same time, he had hoped, or people like him had hoped, that poverty would decrease. With the increase of wealth, that wealth would not remain confined within uh, a very small section of the people. So the wealthy people would not continue to amass that wealth, but it would be evenly distributed in the society. So he is asking this: what wealth, when wealth increased, why did poverty also increase in the country? So why is this happening? The fact that wealth is increasing, but poverty is also increasing. That is a very strange thing. He fails to understand the reason. Poverty should decrease. If people become wealthy in the country, how would poverty also increase? What happened to the means of increasing the prosperity of the people? So he is asking,
Sir, audio to
any problem? Do you have any problem listening? Any problem? Can you hear me? Can you hear me properly? If you have any problem in hearing me, please tell me, okay? Uh, and I hope you can see this also. I didn't ask you, but I hope you can see the text. Though I have shared it with you in your group, WhatsApp group still. Now, so the question is there. The questions are there. The questions that are being put forward by the poet to the political leaders of the country. So he's asking these political leaders, you had promised when you came to us begging for votes that you'd take some measures, you'd take such measures as would help in increasing the prosperity and well-being of the people of the country, the general public. But Sahir Ludhianvi is surprised, is pained or saddened, is also confused to find that uh, even after perhaps 3 years, as you know, in the year 1950, India became a republic. So most probably he's talking about the passage of time since independence. So he's saying that, well, or perhaps even after that, when the first elections took place and the first government uh, came to power, the promise was hollow, as it seems. Those who walked beside us on the street of the gallows, what happened to those friends and comrades and fellow travelers? So Sahil Ludhianvi he was a leftist by temperament. So he is putting these questions. He says that there were many of our friends who had walked beside us on the street of the gallows, who had willingly uh, joined us in the fight for independence, and they had laid down their lives on the gallows. The British had awarded them capital punishment. So they had died, they had become martyrs in the cause of gaining our motherland's independence. So where are those friends now, those comrades, those associates and fellow travelers on the way? They were with us previously, but now I cannot see them anymore. So they should have been with us. What is the price being set for the blood of martyrs? So he is asking, these martyrs, these young men, young people, they died for the country. So what is the price that they paid? It was a heavy price. They paid with their lives. What happened to the punishable ones for whom we were ready to lay down our lives? And those who did not join us, the punishable ones, who should have been, who did not join us in the fight for independence. And there were people who were indifferent to our struggle, the struggle that we waged, for which we laid down our lives. My friends who laid down their lives. So those people who are exploiting the poor, the masses, the freedom fighters, the blood of the martyrs actually has flown. It has flooded, rather. It has flooded the streets. It has flooded uh, the country. So the price that was paid by these martyrs? What was the price actually? And why were the people who did not support us not punished? The helpless cannot even afford a shroud to cover their nakedness. What happened to those promises of silks and brocades? So the condition now as Sahir Ludhianvi finds it, he finds it as a kind of a sad situation. And he is referring to the poor whom he can see here and there in the country, everywhere he is going. And they do not have a shroud. A shroud is a piece of cloth, as you know. It is used to cover the dead body of a person, or wrap the body of a person who has died. So even that is not available for the poor people, while uh, they had been promised of silk garments and brocades, that is a heavy fabric with patterns in gold and silver, woven in patterns with patterns of gold and silver. So a very high quality garment, clothing. So the promises, the broken promises, that's the thing that should be sort of the focus here. The broken promises which no one kept. The leaders did not keep those promises they had made. And Sahir Ludhianvi is obviously angered. He is disappointed. He is full of sorrow at this situation now. Cherisher of democracy, friend of humanity, wisher of peace. What happened to all those titles we had conferred upon ourselves? So he is saying that we had talked about our leaders as people who were lovers of democracy. Since there was this tyrannical government, foreign tyrannical government, the British government, who was treating us down, who was oppressing us, we as a nation wanted to embrace democracy as a form of government. We became a republic, the democratic form of government. So there were leaders who had given themselves the names of cherisher of democracy. They had also talked about being friends of humanity. That is, they would stand by the human beings, their colleagues or their fellow Indians in times of need. So they would act as real friends in times of suffering. Wisher of peace. They were peace-loving people. So these are all titles which were sort of self-conferred by these rulers, who now have forgotten their duties towards the nation. So we had conferred upon ourselves these titles. Ourselves here means, of course, is talking about those people who had previously talked about being supportive of the masses. Why is the malady of religion still without a cure? So this, as you all are aware of this, India was divided on the basis of religion. Pakistan was declared by Muhammad Ali Jinnah to be the land where Muslims would be staying, and India would be for the Hindus and the other people of other religions. But it did not happen that way, of course. So there were Muslims who did not go to uh, Pakistan or to East Pakistan also. So, but the fact that there were riots, communal riots, and you know that the story of the partition is a bloody one. It is a very sad phase in the history of the Indian subcontinent. Uh, and obviously, religion was the major cause, because a person had a different religion, he or she was killed or tortured. So he's saying that that malady, that disease, it's still continuing even now. We have not been able to find any remedy to this. No cure, no medicine. We are still bickering, we are still quarreling over religion, and how true it is. Even today, what is happening in some parts of our country, you can see. So it will continue. There would be some people who would not want Indians to live peacefully, and that was what was happening during those times. What happened to those rare and precious descriptions? So this is very ironical, as you can see. The use of the terms, the words rare, precious. So he is mocking. Sahir Ludhianvi is so much distraught. He is so sort of, you can say, saddened, also angered. He cannot really take this anymore. So the rare and precious prescriptions of brotherhood, of unity, of sharing the wealth evenly in the society, the eradication of social differences, social status, all those were talked about earlier. But now everything is different. That is no longer the case. So the malady of religion is still ruling over us. Every street is a field of flames, every city a slaughterhouse. What happened to the principles of the oneness of life? So the oneness of life, meaning obviously the unity, the brotherhood, the sense of brotherhood and sisterhood that should have been there between the men and women of our country. That has disappeared. We are full of hatred towards each other, and we are suspicious of each other's activities. Each and every street, Sahil Ludhianvi is saying here, it is a field of flame. So fire is burning, both literally and metaphorically. The fire of hatred, the fire of anger, the hearts of the people. There is no love, no respect, no consideration, no sympathy, nothing for the fellow countrymen and women. Only the hatred that is forever burning. And people are trying to get the upper hand. They are trying to amass wealth in whatever way they can. And they are doing that by killing their brothers and sisters. So it is a very sad situation. A slaughterhouse. So just as animals are slaughtered, the human beings, they are also slaughtered. The principles of the oneness of life, the brotherhood of man, humanity has disappeared. The tenet of humanity, That has disappeared. That is the most important thing now that Sahir Ludhianvi notices, and he is bringing it to the fore in this particular poem. So independence has not taught us to remain united. The division of the country, it has not taught us anything. We are still quarreling with ourselves, and we have not learned any lesson. Life wanders aimlessly in the wilderness of gloom. What happened to the moons that had risen on the horizon? So again, the moon signifying a new hope, new, uh, you know, new feelings, new energy, enthusiasm, something beautiful. The moon is symbolical of that. Something beautiful, something meaningful would be happening after independence. The post-independence days would be different. Not like the pre-independence days or the time when those riots were taking place, and India was really being destroyed. But life has lost its direction, and gloom and kind of a darkness has settled down, a metaphorical darkness in the hearts of the people. It's a kind of a wilderness where out of which no direction can be found. And of course, the moon that rises now does not bring in any message of hope, any message of love, or anything positive as such. If I am the culprit, you are no less a sinner. O leaders of the nation, you are guilty too. So, in the last two lines, you can see how Sahir Ludhianvi is directly accusing the political leaders, leaders of the nation, the so-called leaders of the nation, who have assumed power, who are living in a very, luxurious state. They are living happily. Now that they are sort of reaping the fruits, the benefits of independence, without sharing it with their colleagues, with their country people. So he is saying that if I am the culprit, if you say that I am responsible for the unrest, the kind of disturbance that is raging in this country now, then I would accuse you too of being the sinner, having committed the sin of hatred, not loving your fellow human being, the sin of killing people, the sin of not being sympathetic towards your fellow human being. So you are responsible for the governance of this country, you are the leaders of the nation. But look what you have achieved and what you are doing. So you are guilty too, equally guilty, like me. If I am guilty, if you accuse me of doing these things, of not being sympathetic or not being indifferent, it applies equally to you also. So the poem, as you can see, it is 10 stanzas. It has 10 stanzas, and all the stanzas are very short. They only have 2 lines each. Only the fourth stanza has an extra syllable or extra word. So 26th January, it is a poem where the poet is, of course, voicing forth his sadness, his sense of sadness, his melancholy, his anger, his disappointment at the kind of situation that he finds himself in. So that is, I think, the message that Sahir Ludhianvi as a poet, and he was a very great poet. He was capable of bringing in those images, the symbols, as you can see, how he has very poignantly uh, depicted the situation that was prevailing during those times in the country.